You are listening to the Cattle Call Podcast. This is the place where computer-aided design and drafting meets humor and practicality, with a touch of business acumen thrown in for fun. Jim and Rocco, the owners of Zentek Consultants, the premier U.S. technology consulting firm for architecture, engineering, construction, and manufacturing, discuss the fascinating world of CAD with some humor and some honesty. The Cattle Call Podcast. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Cattle Call Podcast. I'm your host, Jim Coppinger, and with me, as always, is my co-host and always cheerful business partner,
Rocco Parisi. He's always so cheery.
Hey, somebody's got to be cheery around here, Mr. Grump. That's all good. Hey, but that's all right, because we have a special guest in today. We have Mr. Matt DeBasio. Did I say that right, Matt?
You did.
I did. Matt told me if I didn't get it right, he was going to break my kneecaps. So, and he's got Rocco on. I feel, you know what it is? I feel this is like an episode of Goodfellas. You know, I got the DeBasio and Parisi. I'm like the one Irish guy in the mob. You know, I'm like Jimmy the Hand. You know, it's who knows what's going on with that guy over there. So I just want to make sure I got that right. So okay, so Matt DeBasio. So Matt is first of all, Matt, thanks for being here today. We appreciate you agreeing to do this with us.
I appreciate it as well. Thanks for having me.
No, it's our pleasure. So Matt is an estimator, a construction technologist, and kind of an all-around digital anarchist. And he's here to talk with us about Procore project management software and how it meets or misses on our topic for today. And our topic for today is Procore, promises versus practical performance. And in case you guys didn't notice, I'm a big fan of alliterative titles. Rocco yells at me for that in our marketing all the time. So Matt works for Agnes Construction Management, and we met via his suffering through a couple of my online classes, and we just worked together on an online BIM learning path for the GBCA's Technology Week Summit here in New Jersey. So, despite the fact that he's had to listen to me ramble for many hours in the past, he's a masochist and agreed to be here anyway. So thanks again, Matt. We're glad you're here.
Thanks so much for having me. And your class was not that bad, Jim. It was pretty good.
Well,
I enjoyed
listen,
it. I learned a lot.
Not that bad is probably the best recommendation I've ever gotten from a class. So, yeah, well, I'll take that. It's not what Rocco tells me. So, see there, Rocco? I'm not so bad. There's my benefit.
Wow. He only had to listen to you for 2 hours. I got to listen to you for hours on end.
That's very true. You think you got a bad? Think about my poor wife. So, all right. So, Matt. Why don't you tell all of our listeners about your background, right? And what do you do on a regular basis for Agnes? I mean, I know you're an unapologetic tech geek, right? And you have your hand in a million different things over there. Tell us what you do.
Well, that's true. I am a total dork, and I'm proud of it.
As you should be.
I also like your term, the construction or the digital anarchist. I'm going to start using that one.
I'm a fan.
So I have been here at Agnes for 15 years, and I pretty much had the tech bug right from the start in construction. When I first got hired here, I think I had this vision of how construction operated and all the great tools that were being used in the 21st century, and I think I was a little disappointed, maybe even horrified when I found out how things were really done back in 2005 when I started. So being the precocious youth I kind of took the bull by the horns and really started looking at tools and processes and tried to change things for the better. And I think that interest and skill set probably saved me here while I learned how to estimate. But yeah, I spend probably about 80% of my time in pre-construction and estimating, and the rest of my time is really focused on information systems and construction technology implementation, innovation. I am a drone pilot. I'm pretty proud of the drone program that we started here. It was certainly a team effort, and I have a lot of great people that I work with, as well as some of the things we've done in BIM and VDC, and just the overall digital revolution that we've experienced over the past few years. We've done a great job. And I'm looking forward to what the future holds for sure.
Cool. And I think that's the key, right? It always takes that one person who kind of gets the bug and sees the future and says, look, there's better ways we can do things. And that's how you move forward as a company. So.
Yeah, and I embrace my role here as being that guy. I'm the
You're that guy. Is that what they talk about?
Yeah.
You're like, oh man, he's that guy.
Yeah, the disruptor, right, and the guy that's always pushing forth to spend more money on tech tools, but also getting better at proving ROI. So that's a key part of it.
There it is. There it is. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about Procore, and Procore is the most used construction industry management tool, and it's got a lot of features and tools and processes that can have a really big impact on a construction company's bottom line. And Matt, who is a tech-savvy Procore user out there on the front lines, is here to give us some solid feedback on how well those tools translate into actual project usage. So Matt, Procore is it's what we call it an enterprise-based platform solution, right? It's sort of one tool to do everything on the construction management side. So let me ask you then, what do you think are the benefits and the drawbacks of a single large system like that versus having smaller, more focalized, if that's even a word, focused specialty systems?
Well, that's a great question to lead off with, and I think right off the bat, the biggest benefit of a platform such as this is having a single source of truth. And we've heard that phrase a lot in construction technology in the past 10 years or so. But what that means for me is there's less fragmentation or the siloed data. We've heard that term a lot as well, right? Data silos. I also think on a single platform, it's certainly easier to train users within a single environment, right? The user experience is a little more fluid. They're going to see and experience the same things day to day, at least for most of their tasks.
Right.
I also think this being a cloud-based platform, it brings the advantage of less hardware headaches, right? Disaster recovery planning, updates, upgrades, availability and downtime when you have to do certain projects, right? You want that 99.9% availability for your users. So I think they're probably the primary benefits of a single source platform. Now, the drawbacks, the implementation is a massive change and therefore a little bit more difficult to manage as opposed to doing things one bite at a time, right?
Right.
A single platform also, I think, goes against the best tool for the job theory, and a single platform might not offer the best in class for some or any of the tools in the suite that you're purchasing on that single platform, right?
Okay, I think it's a fair assessment. Yeah, like you said, if you're using individual systems, exactly like you said, you're going to get things that are focused on handling one task, one problem extraordinarily well, whereas an enterprise level system, it's a jack of all trades. It does a lot of things pretty well. All right, so I think that's a fair assessment there.
Exactly.
Okay. So, all right. So now, listen. Before we get too far into this, right? For full disclosures to everybody listening, Zentech here, Rocco and I, we are certified Procore consultants, right? That means that we work with clients in the construction world to, set up and optimize their Procore systems for them. So, we're not impartial in terms of this program, right? And I bring it up because Rocco and I do try to be platform neutral on the podcast here because we don't want this to become a sales platform, but that said, sometimes we really do think the systems that we work with are the best ones out there, right? And that's why, we talk about them here on the show. But we do at least try to warn people when we have a vested interest so that nobody's getting mad at me later on. And that's why we have Matt here today, because Matt is he's an active Procore user who doesn't even use Zentech as his consulting firm, though I'm going to sick Rocco on him after the show to see if we can change that. So this way, we're getting some honest opinions here on both the good and the bad of the Procore system. So Matt, let's shift back to you then. So, does Procore, in your eyes, does it give any clear advantage, or does it have serious drawbacks when you compare it to say some of the other players in the construction tech world, right? How does it stack up against systems like Viewport or Sage, or even some of the Autodesk 360 type offerings?
Another good question. We know that Procore is a big player in the market, and they hold a big market share for a reason. I think a big advantage to their product is probably just the culture and mentality of the company. I think Procore has shown they're committed to that constant improvement and really pushing the envelope with what is possible in construction technology, and they seem to be really in front of some of the hard trends that we're seeing in the industry. Specifically, I think they have a mobile-first approach. Their mobile tools are great. That's not to say that any of the other players that you mentioned don't have mobile tools that are great, but I think Procore really knew that the mobile-first approach was the right way to go for construction. As far as drawbacks, I think maybe the company has pivoted a bit too much to follow some market opportunities outside their core customer base, such as becoming a platform for owners or the client-side tools.
Right.
That might leave their core customers, the contractors, with a little bit less attention, right? I think their product is very GC or CM focused, so I'd be interested to maybe speak a little bit more with specialty contractors, the subcontractors and vendors, to see what benefits and drawbacks they're experiencing. I think that brings up another huge challenge in their world, if not an outright drawback, which is, what do you do when the owner, the CM, and the subs are all using Procore, right? How do you align the project data to reduce double work or double data entry and provide that consistency or persistence in data that would drive more value for the project, right, as opposed to the individual customers?
Yeah. And that's actually a big component. It's actually one of the things that we deal with here, as consultants, right? It's a big part of that. I think to answer that question, at least from my mind, it really comes down to that initial conversation, right? If you've got 3 different stakeholders who are all just kind of running their own silos of data, it doesn't really give you the benefit you're looking for. It's about choosing one host and then using that one host as the primary sorting point for all of that information. I think in that case, an enterprise system like this works really, really well. But who's going to host it? That's the fight.
You're absolutely right. Yeah, that calls into question the idea of the single source of truth, right? Mm-hmm. Which source is the truth, and then you have the project stakeholders sort of battling over who owns what and what is the master record on the project.
Yes.
But I think as far as the other products that you mentioned, there's other great products out there, right? We're also not here to bash anybody else, but I think Procore is the market leader for a reason. Even with its faults, it's probably still one of the strongest platforms out there. I would say, though, that Autodesk probably has an advantage for projects with true BIM workflows. Mm-hmm. I know Procore has been working on that, but at this point, as far as these enterprise-level single-source construction platforms, I really see this kind of as a 2-horse race between Procore and Autodesk, and maybe the Win Place show I would probably give to Trimble, I suppose. They're in the space as well, and they do a good job for specific applications. But I think it's really a 2-horse race between Procore and Autodesk.
Yeah. And I think you're absolutely right, particularly on the BIM side. And I think that the limited drawback there that we see, or at least that I see in terms of the Autodesk 360 stuff, it is here. I'll put it like this. I heard somebody once describe the difference between Viewpoint and Procore. They said, Procore was construction management software that they added some accounting stuff onto, and Viewpoint was accounting software that they added some construction management stuff onto. And they work, they have the tools, but it's about where your real focus is. And I think the drawback that I see in the construction side with the 360, you're absolutely right that when it comes to the BIM 3D modeling structure, conflict checking and resolution stuff, that the 360 is the clear leader. It's not even a question. I think, though, that Autodesk still has a very design-centric standpoint, and I think that's the one area that either they have to really change that, or people like Procore are going to have to step up more to into more of the BIM. So I think we'll see where that falls out. I think that's an interesting stance.
I think your assessment is spot on, Jim. I often said that in the AEC industry, Autodesk had a real stranglehold on the A and the E, but not so much on the C. And I think they've recently, through mergers, acquisitions, et cetera, they've made some serious moves to get into that space, and that's why, they're one of the 2 horses.
Yep.
But I also like your assessment of your comparison between Procore and Viewpoint, where one was an accounting-centric platform that happened to pick up some construction management tools, and Procore was construction management that later added financials, and that's a really good kind of comparison between the two, I think.
Yeah. So Rocco, let's wake you up over there and bring you into the conversation here today. So, we used to be Viewpoint partners as well. And you and I, we both have a very long history in the Autodesk world. So what are you hearing from our client base in terms of, Procore versus those systems that we've been discussing?
Yeah, it does oftentimes come down to the two, to Procore and Viewpoint. And, I definitely hear a lot of folks using both, but there's a little bit more of a frustration with Viewpoint in its cost structure and its ease of use.
Right.
Versus Procore. A lot more folks seem to be happier with the Procore structure all around, from the cost to use. And it's interesting how they price their model on construction volume.
Right.
So.
Yeah, and like I said, the other thing I seen when we were dealing with Viewpoint, both systems are a bit in the modular structure. You get what you pay for, and you only choose the options that you need, and so on. But I think that there's a lot more overlap between those modules in Procore, so that people kind of learn processes and methodologies that transfer from, module to module, right? From, construction management to project management to contract. A lot of the same features, whereas Viewpoint, it's really very different. When you go from one module in the Viewpoint to another, it's like an entirely different software sometimes. It can be a little tough for people to grab onto. So we've definitely seen some resistance in that. So, all right. So when it comes to the construction world, right, there are two watchwords that we always need to keep in mind, right? And those are cost and efficiency, right? Those two are big things. So, all too often, right, we find that they're at the opposite ends of the seesaw. Efficient tools are expensive and affordable tools are inefficient. I guess it's like my mom always told me, right? You get what you pay for. But still, the best situation that you can hope for in construction is to get as close as you can to the balance point for those two goals, right? And the truth is, most of my construction clients are willing to spend money. And I'll be honest to say that much more than my design clients, who are notoriously tight-fisted, as long as they get the results that they've been promised, right? That's the key with construction people. They don't mind paying as long as they're getting good value. So, Matt, let's talk about that in terms of Procore. What are your feelings in terms of, the cost versus the practical use? Do you find that it's a good investment? And how do you think that the Procore pricing model affects adoption, system-wide and future growth for it?
Well, like any investment, there's risk involved, right?
Yeah.
It's not guaranteed. And I think your mama was right. You do get what you pay for. But with software, you get out of it what you put into it. And I think that's an important lesson that's often forgotten. Despite high price tags, the system doesn't build the building for you, and there's no magic button to do all the work.
Right.
And so you can save money in overhead by, cutting staff and things like that. You've got to really put the work in on your side to really get the value out of it in your business operations than to justify the high price tag. You had mentioned this sort of seesaw or balance between cost and efficiency. In construction, we talk a lot about the iron triangle, right, which is cost, schedule, and quality.
Right.
And I don't think it's that dissimilar from a software side, right? There is that balance, and what you give up on one side, you can gain on the other, but you can't have everything, right? There's always that balance.
Yeah, three corners. Pick two. That's what you get.
Yeah, right. So cost, schedule, and quality. You only get to pick two. That's correct. That's what we always say. So that being said, the cost is certainly a huge factor in decision making, right? If anybody's considering purchasing a platform such as Procore and moving forward with it, it's very bottom line, right? You mentioned that Procore's business model is based on volume, and they price you as a factor of your annual work log total, right?
Yep.
That essentially makes Procore a partner in your business. And that's something that doesn't sit well with a lot of people from a business perspective, right? The construction industry already has notoriously low profit margins compared to what we do and the risks that we are willing to take. Mm-hmm. So the fact that Procore is essentially creeping in on a percentage of that business is, you can understand why it wouldn't sit well with some people. I think their year-over-year pricing increases are also probably a detriment. That's something I think they're going to need to get under control in order to continue their insanely rapid growth and keep that high market share. But other pricing models don't always work so well either, right? And specifically user-based licensing, for instance. I am not a fan of user-based licensing for construction software. There are just too many players on a typical construction project to count heads and price it properly, and allocating individual licenses, sometimes at different access levels and so forth, is just a nightmare. So I think maybe a project-based pricing model works well in a lot of cases for these types of platforms, but we are where we are, and the companies are pricing how they think that they're going to be the most effective and profitable. So that's what we're facing. But I think there's something to be said for the other side of the fence too. Anybody that's had user-based licenses for construction software, and you've gone to the trouble of allocating them throughout your staff, if you're a CM or GC, and then the design team and the owner and your subs and your vendors and even second tier subs, that gets to be really difficult. So the single price all you can eat maybe makes it easier for us, but that doesn't make it easier to swallow when you look at the final price tag, right?
No, and you're absolutely right. Like I said, and I get that concern, and I don't in any way disagree with you. I think that Procore's thought is, I think, a good one in that by going with that volume-based fee, it kind of makes it a little bit more palatable for smaller companies, right? For smaller projects where you're going with a fixed price, and like, hey, you got to buy X number of seats for 30 guys. Well, if you're doing the McDonald's down the road, you can't use that product. Sure, if you're doing LAX and you're doing 30 new terminals, not a problem. You'll absorb that cost in a few weeks. But I think that's their concept. I'm not sure I'm with you. I don't know that it hits the true mark, but I think the concept is good. They're thinking in the right direction. So I'll give them that much.
I will give them that too. But just to put my estimator hat on here for a second, when it comes to being competitive in pricing projects, I think that may work against you, right? So even if you're a smaller firm, the factor or the formula that they use to price you as a smaller company is probably higher than some of the bigger national players, right? If you do $500 million or $1 billion worth of volume, you're going to get a much better deal on an enterprise system like Procore. The percentage that you're paying against that volume is going to be much lower than the company that's doing 5 or 10 million. So I guess the question is, if you're that smaller company and you've got a higher percentage, let's just pick a number. We'll use 1% as easy math number. But if you're adding 1% to all of your projects in order to pay for Procore, it's going to be very difficult to be competitive, especially in this market with the uncertainty that we're seeing. And let's face it, profit margins, as I mentioned, are notoriously low in this industry. So are you willing to take 1% less profit in order to price at the same level of competitiveness you were and pay for your software platform? So I think something's got to give there.
Yeah, it's a very valid point. It's like you said earlier, right? It comes back to the ROI. You're going to invest that 1% today. You just better hope, or you better know, that you're getting 2 or 3% additional profit by using that platform. So that's the only thing you can work with.
And maybe I shouldn't have used 1% as the easy math number, because any listeners out there that are considering Procore, they hear 1% of my volume and they probably just fell out of their chairs. It's not 1%, but
yeah, it is not, folks. It really isn't. So, all right. So that's all right, though. We're going to go ahead and I think this is a great place to take a quick break to hear from today's sponsor. And when we come back, I want to get into some of the practical aspects of Procore and how to implement it and how to structure it. So we will be back in just a few more minutes with more of the Cattle Call Podcast. All right, everybody, today's cattle call was brought to you courtesy of Zentech Consultants. That's Rocco and I. Zentech Consultants works with design and manufacturing firms to help our clients purchase and implement the software that they need in these complex industries. We provide a single point of contact for clients to buy, develop, and learn the most vital software systems for your specific needs. Zentech strives to be your trusted technology partner from your initial needs all the way through long-term support and training for your entire staff. So Rocco, why don't you tell them how to reach out to Zentech?
All right, yeah, you can reach out to us through zentechconsultants.net. You can email us at sales@zentechconsultants.net, or you can even call us 866-824-4459.
Excellent. We look forward to hearing from y'all. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Cattle Call Podcast. We're talking with Matt DeBasio of Agnes Construction Management about the Procore construction management system and his views of it as a full-time user. In the first segment, we talked about the costs and the benefit and the drawbacks of the system. And now I want to get into the actual, more of the daily use, right? Where it shines and where it falls short as a regular user. So, Matt, let's start with implementation of a company-wide system like Procore. How did you guys get involved with the system at Agnes, and what were the biggest lessons that you learned in terms of making that transition to regular daily use?
Well, I guess I'll address the question about how we got involved with the system. I think we realized the need for that single source that we talked about earlier, right? The single source of truth, and also just a more integrated approach to our project data. So rather than having the best tool for the job and your information spread out amongst 3 or 4 different systems, we needed a way to kind of bring it all together. So that's one of the reasons we started looking at Procore and ultimately selecting it. Now, as far as implementation, right, once we made the decision to move forward, the implementation phase, that's really the key, right? Then the hard work begins. So I'll try to give you some of my lessons learned to share with the audience, whether they're current users of Procore or maybe they're thinking about signing on with Procore, maybe they just signed on with Procore and they're kind of looking uphill at this mountain of a task and implementation. So the very first thing that I tell anybody that asks about implementation with Procore is, if I had to do one thing differently from the way I did it here in implementation, it's that I think you should implement by individual tool in Procore and not by project. And here's why. In construction, we look at the project as sort of the units, right? That's our product. And everything we do is mentally is very, very much glued to that concept of the project as a unit. But if you're implementing Procore, especially if you kind of buy multiple tool suites, right? You've got the QA, QC, you've got the project management, you've got the financials. If you take a project and you take a small team of people that are going to be working on that project and you say, okay, everybody, here's how you manage your cost change, here's how you manage your documents, here's how you communicate, here's how you do your QA, QC. Okay, now go. You're giving them 20 different things that are all different from what they had been doing before. And even though it's kind of a clean slate with a new project, they still need time to figure that out. The other reason for this theory is the unit of production, which is our projects in construction, takes a lot longer to deliver, right? So that first project that you might choose to implement it on, you might go ahead and you go for a couple of months before the next project comes along where you're going to do the same thing and implement. If you want to realize value faster, this is not the right way to do it. So if you do it by tool, what you're going to do is you're going to take everybody in your company and you're going to say, okay, everybody, we have this new platform called Procore, and from now on, all of your drawings and specs are going to go into Procore. Mm-hmm. You're not going to look at anything else. But at that point, you've got everybody in the company on every project using Procore for drawings and specs, right?
Yeah.
So you've automatically kind of lifted the rising tide, as they say, right? You lifted everybody up in the company in one step forward in implementation, rather than just a small group of people on one project and they're maybe struggling with the 20 some odd tools that you're throwing at them. You want to pick one or two tools to begin with, focus on that, make sure everybody's cool with it, make sure everybody's getting value out of it before you move on to the next thing. Right? So that's the biggest lesson I learned in implementation. If I could have done it differently, that's what I would have done.
Perfect answer.
Besides that, I would also say create process maps for your workflows. If you've never actually drawn out a workflow process in your company, try it, put it on paper or a whiteboard or something, or some sort of visualization program. Do this first before you attack the implementation part of it. And the reason is because it allows you to match up the functions in the system easier to what you've been doing, right? This is going to help identify similarities and differences and tell you where you need to train more for those things that are really different for the users. And also it helps you manage the change better, because you say, okay, all these things are similar, but this is really different, this one part of it. So that's where what we need to manage, and that's where we need to train.
Yeah, and that's a vital step. That's vital. I don't know how anybody gets through their daily workloads without some kind of a mind map to show you where things go and who connects to what and who approves what. I live and die on those things. I don't know how anybody can do anything without knowing the workflow process that you've established over decades.
Yeah, it really helps you understand where you're coming from and also where you hope to be. So if you have an existing process map and then you create a new process map for what it looks like under Procore, now you also have a nice document to kind of reference as a manual, right? These are the steps in order to accomplish this task. And you can never have too much training, right? That's the other thing. Time for training, I get it. It's really tough sometimes. So the other lesson is I would recommend trying to establish sort of a small group of experts in the tool, maybe individuals in different areas, so that those individuals can help along the other users as needed, and maybe like be a champion to constantly identify areas where more training is needed and for whom. Things in Procore change especially fast, so it's important to have people that are focused on that to keep up on it in order to drive value.
Yeah, no doubt. So good points. Yeah, and I think you're absolutely right. I think with any software, right, particularly one where you're hitting the enterprise level like you are with Procore, the key is, like you're saying, to optimize it off of the default settings and adapt it to your own workflows, right? And you got to figure out what those workflows are first. And I think a common mistake that people make when they bring a big system like Procore on board is to kind of try and figure out how does the program work, and then reverse engineer their process into making everybody now work the way the program works. And to my mind, that is completely backwards. You want to adjust the software and tweak it to your way of working, not the other way around, right? And that's what we mean here at Zentek, and when we talk about efficiency, it's really about letting your people kind of keep working the way that they know how to work, right? That they're most comfortable with, and you implement your new software in a way that helps them be better at their job, right? The last thing you want to do is slow the work down as your staff is struggling to learn entirely new process and tools. I mean, there's always a learning curve, exactly what you said. And if you throw out the whole system on one job, and we actually usually, we work in that methodology as well. We find it's much easier to actually bring on the one tool. And like you said, that, you got 20 different departments, 20 different projects all working the same way. You showed them a very small, narrow window of what they are capable of. Half of those people will go, oh, this is great, and learn some new features and move your company forward, while the other half at least have the support of those other 20 people on a day-to-day basis to help them understand that single new process.
Exactly. You're managing the ability for people to kind of innovate on their own or move forward if they're ready, but you're also managing change for the people that are struggling. And the old adage, how do you eat an elephant, right? One bite at a time. So when you manage such a massive change, it's important to do it in smaller, more manageable pieces. And so for me, that's why I said right off the bat, one tool at a time, that is smaller and more manageable and drives more value faster than using the project as the bite-sized piece.
Perfect answer. Perfect answer. So, all right. So, Matt, I promised, right? I told you I'm not going to hold it against you that you didn't use Zentek as your Procore consultant. But how did you guys address, your initial configuration and workflow issues? Did you bring in an outside firm to help, or did you guys just struggle through on your own, right? And what do you think are the good and the bad of both of those approaches to trying to set up Procore?
Well, we struggled through it on our own. We
brave man.
We created a small group of interested individuals, key players from different departments, and we put the work in. And that's the biggest kind of advice I think I can give to anyone who's looking to implement in-house is put the work in, the process mapping, take one piece at a time and move on. But also, you have to begin with the end in mind, right? You have to define what is your ideal work process. So what are the objectives that we were trying to reach, or what are the problems that we were trying to solve by choosing this software platform in the first place? What are the results that we're looking for? And then you work backwards from there. You identify bottlenecks in the process. As I said, certain areas are going to be there's more change involved in the process with a new system than others. So you identify those and you work on them harder. Also, I would say work with your customer success manager at Procore on those issues. That's what they're there for. They're there to help on those things. And we've had a really good group of customer success managers. They turn them over probably a little bit too quickly, but the 3 or 4 that we've worked with, they have experience on our side in construction management, right? So they understand our pain a little bit, and so they're really on our side to help work through those issues. You need to have an individual or a team that's really, really focused on the implementation and the training. If you can't commit those resources in-house, then maybe a consultant would be a better choice. That's what you guys are there for, right? To help those companies that are struggling, that don't have the resources to commit in-house for really focusing on implementation and training.
Right. And like a certified consultant like us, we work hand in hand with those Procore managers, your account managers, to make sure that we can step in where they kind of have to stop at the software end and say like, okay, is what it does. We can take it that next step and get into how do you work as a company on a day-to-day. So, all right. So Rocco, let's wake you up again. Stop. You're sitting here snoozing through this conversation. So when you talk I'm sorry, did we wake you up?
Educational. This is great. It's educational.
Hey, look at that. Educational and entertaining. If only school had been like that, we'd all be rich by now. All right. So when you do talk to Procore users or people who are interested in Procore, Rocco, do you see that a lot of them are looking for consulting help, or do you think that they're comfortable or think that they're okay setting things up on their own internally, kind of going at it the way that Matt did?
It all depends on the customer, right? I mean, it's certainly not a small undertaking like Matt's describing. And a lot of companies right now, like there's been a shortage in personnel, right? So it's hard to find that talent. So you have people like Matt who are pulled in 20 different directions. So it all depends on the firm, but I think generally the smaller firms in particular are looking for more guidance because they don't have a lot of staff on in-house to be able to handle the implementation.
Right. Yeah, you've already got people wearing 10, 15 different hats. Even in the larger firms, you still see that now. Like you said, there's definitely not just a skilled labor shortage, but there is a skilled technologist shortage in this industry as well. So I would agree with that. So all right. So folks, like I said earlier, right, we're certified Procore consultants, right? So Rocco and I we're big fans of the Procore system. But to be completely fair, there is no such thing as a flawless software system, not in any market, right? And there never will be, right? Software has limitations and drawbacks, right? It's about seeing if the positives outweigh the negatives and by how much, right? So with that in mind, I want to present a fair argument on both sides here, and I'm going to have Matt play the devil's advocate for us here today. So Matt, why don't you give us what you see as the 3 biggest issues that you see in implementing and working with Procore on a daily basis, right? What areas present your company with the biggest struggle?
Ooh, good question. Good question. So, in no particular order, I would right off the bat, I would say it changes very rapidly, and sometimes it's hard to keep up, right? So you need constant training, and in construction, the way things are constantly moving and we're pressed on schedule and things like that, we often have very little time to commit to learning. And I think that's really one of the most important things in order to, quote, be good at Procore or to get the most value out of it for your company is to constantly learn what are they working into the system as far as features and functionality, what can it do for us, how do we use it. People very quickly get into a habit, and then it stalls, right? They're not learning, they're not introducing new tools and features into their workflow. I also think one of the things that we've struggled with, I think an issue or a negative with Procore's product is just in general output. And what I mean by that is the things that you see come out of Procore, such as email communications, reporting. I think there's probably some work that could be done on that side to make it cleaner, simpler, easier for the users. I've heard a lot of folks say on the other side, meaning either on the design side or from our specialty contractors, like the email is very confusing. Like, what's going on with this submittal? it's got like the entire life history of the submittal in the email, and I just want a link that says, here's what you're supposed to do. Go to the submittal and do it. The reporting, they do offer some substantial custom reporting capabilities, but again, it takes a lot of work to get through that and to make it look and feel the way you want and to get the information you want. There's also a lack of kind of cross-tool reporting in Procore, right? So if you want to compare data from, say, your budget to change events or change orders, there's not an easy way to do that at the moment within Procore. Other than that, I would say the day-to-day stuff, drawings for me is something that I think they could probably work on a little bit. So just as an example, if you're in the field and you're building from the latest and greatest set of drawings, right, that single source of truth, although the Procore mobile app is fantastic, being able to navigate through a set of digital drawings the same way a lot of people were used to navigating and building from a full-size paper set of drawings isn't the easiest thing in the world. I have seen other tools that have come pretty much all the way in allowing that navigation, right? So a tool like Bluebeam, you can do a lot with that as far as navigating through a PDF set of construction documents. So for Procore, on the mobile side or even on the web side, maybe the navigation of drawings, make it a little smoother, easier. Think about what it is like to build from a set of drawings. Like, could you build from this if you were in the field? Right. And then finally, you had already mentioned financials, right? Procore started out as a construction management platform, and then they kind of added financials later. In a lot of areas that shows, they still have some work to do on financials. I think change management makes a lot of sense in Procore. That's probably the best part of financials, but getting back to output, right? So the payment process, invoicing, they have a specific tool for invoicing, but for me and for us as a company, that is one particular point of contention. We would very much like to see a smooth and easy payment process, right? We produce a payment application that's got all the information we need for backup to present to an owner so that during an OAC meeting, there's not much debate or contention about what the information is or where it came from. You've got all the backup in Procore already. And so that's just an example of, they've got a little ways to go, and you got to begin with the end in mind, right? Like, what would make everyone's life easier? And that is to never go to an OAC meeting again.
There you go. If only we could do that. That would be perfect. All right. So see, we are fair here on the Cattle Call. I gave everybody the chance to hear about the bad stuff, right from the horse's mouth. Having said that, though, I'm not an idiot, despite what Rocco and my wife both say on a regular basis. So I'm going to end out here on the positive note, right? So we all walk away with the warm fuzzy in our hearts towards Procore. So Matt, I'm going to give you the other question, right? What are the 3 best things that you've found in Procore? What features and I cannot get that word out. Tools, thank you, processes, there it is, have had the most positive impact on your company?
So one of the things I mentioned in the 3 biggest issues was that it changes very rapidly and it's hard to keep up. I would also highlight that as a positive, right? The fact that they are constantly improving. The product is certainly not stale. Like some other software products that I've worked with in the past, they are always moving and always doing something to improve the user experience or their tool sets, their offerings, their features. So that could also be construed as a positive. It's just important to keep up on it and train on the things that they're coming out with so that you're driving more value. I would say the QA/QC tool set is probably the strongest out of everything that we use. It allows us to really have a proactive approach to quality control issues during the course of a project, which saves a lot of time at the end, right? So if you're using Procore kind of the way it was intended and in a mobile way, right, in the field, capturing and logging issues that you find and then assigning responsibility, that will end up saving you a lot of time at the end. So that's something that is a huge positive, and we've seen a lot of value from. The ability to integrate with accounting. So Viewpoint started as an accounting software, and they added construction management. Procore, I think, knew all along that integration with other systems was a really important part of building a strong construction management platform. That was also one of the driving factors in our decision to use Procore, is that it integrates with our accounting system. And that really provides just much greater visibility into your project health. And that it just allows you to keep an eye on things. And if things are going to go south, it allows you to react much quicker, right? And that's really important in construction as far as, cost control. And lastly, I would say, I think that was
3. We'll give you one more.
I did 4 things negative, so I'm going to do 4 positive things so that I'm remaining fair and balanced here,
nice.
Right? The last thing I would say about Procore is that their support is amazing. It's absolutely outstanding. They have a great staff and personnel. We have never had any issue with getting help when we need it, and that is a really important factor when you're selecting software. You need the support. You need help with things, and you need to know where to go to get it. I mean, they have many different ways to get help when you need it. They have a chat feature right in the web app. They have a 1-800 number if you want to call. You can always email support@Procore, or you email your customer success manager directly. They tend to respond very quickly. And even though some of the things are like, well, Procore can't do that yet, they listen to the customers, and they have an avenue to run things up the flagpole to say, hey, this is something that a customer has requested. Maybe a lot of other customers requested it, and those things tend to move up higher on the priority list for development. Mm-hmm. So I think they have the right approach when it comes to making sure that people have the help they need, and they also do a good job of listening to the customers. So
yeah, that's what drives, like you said, going back to your first positive point, right? The growth and the adoption of new features and tools is in direct response. And like I said, as partners, sure, we get to work quite a lot with the guys over there at Procore, and they really do have an outstanding staff. We work with a lot of different softwares and features and tools here at Zentech, but honestly, they really do have some of the most knowledgeable and best responding people we've come across. They're really an amazing group of guys. So cool.
They really do. You're right.
All right, so I think that we can leave it there for today. And I want to, again, thank Matt DeBasio of P. Agnes Construction Management for helping us out today. Despite the fact that he knew how crazy this was going to be, he agreed to be here and talk to me anyway. So I appreciate it, Matt.
Guys, thank you so much. This was a lot of fun. I appreciate you having me on the podcast.
Good, man. I really hope that you'll come back and talk more at another time.
Would love to. Excellent. Thanks so much, guys.
All right, folks, we are going to bounce out of here. Thank you all for listening to the Cattle Call Podcast.